mission is to provide a safe learning environment.
Suzu,
Yeah.
before you call it to order, did you want to mention the recording?
Oh, yeah, I guess I should do that before. I was going to do it after I called it to order, but it makes more sense to do it before. OSBA's new recommendations, or which I'll read to you just because the wording is, is better than what I would do, are that we record all meetings. And so let me just read that to you, what they say. If the virtual meeting technology used by the school allows for it, meetings must be recorded, and the recording must be made available to the public. This requirement does not apply to executive sessions. So in response to that, we have not been recording our meetings because they initially did not require it. And so in light of this new guidance, we plan on recording this meeting and those following it. So we have, so Jaren, I think you can go ahead and push record. Everybody's been warned. Okay, now I'll call the meeting to order and read our mission. Our mission is to provide a safe learning environment where students are encouraged and empowered to reach their educational and personal potential. We strive to base all of our decisions on what is best for students. And look at the agenda. I know this is an updated agenda. I don't know that there's anything else. Anybody see anything they want to address?
Would it be possible to move the equity committee update up so that I can give that update?
Yeah, yes, it would be. And that was, I intended to do that. So let's do that right away before we move into district reports. So unless there's anything else on the agenda, Michelle, why don't you go for it?
All right. Well, I attended my first equity committee meeting as the board representative, and I was so heartened and impressed by the caring, passionate staff members who have dedicated themselves to this project for all the right reasons. It just felt like, this was, the time had come to make this be a priority, to do it the right way with, a methodical path forward. But just hearing the caring in our staff members was so uplifting. I was just feeling grateful that I'm on this committee and can witness this, but that our kids are going to be the recipients of some stepped up way of approaching equity in our curriculum and in any way possible, with staff members, kids, bullying, all the ways that equity appears in a school district. So that's really kind of, I just had to big everybody up. I just wanted this board to know that we're in really good hands.
Great. Thank you for being representative, and it's nice to hear that. Anybody have any questions for Michelle about that? Michelle, how often are you meeting, or just sort of whenever, or is there a set?
I think it's gonna try to be every 2 weeks. Is that correct, Jessie?
If you're speaking specifically of the curriculum meetings, I think we're looking at between 2 weeks to once a month. For example, this month with the parent-teacher conferences, it's just a lot to try to do that the same week. So, things will happen. But I think the goal probably, we haven't really decided it entirely, but it sounded like 2 weeks to 4 weeks. For the audit committee, I'm not sure, because I have decided to focus on the curriculum aspect. So that would be something that I think Lou or Julene would know more about.
I'd like to add that along with passion, there was a lot of realistic understanding about what we're taking on. And, how there could be pushback by any number of the demographics that we engage with, parents, staff, students, but that there's a commitment to being sensitive and purposeful about this enterprise.
Thank you, by the way, for your, thank you for that. Hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
No, that's fine. Okay, great. All right, so
Okay, hold on. Mizu, Marilyn's trying to say something and you're not hearing her. So,
she's on. I show that she's muted.
okay, Marilyn, you're muted. Go to the bottom left and see if.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to personally thank anybody that's involved in that project because it's huge. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Good. All right. Andrea, welcome. I see you.
Thank you. I had to turn on other computers and then next thing you know, it all worked out. I don't know what happened, but.
All right, you're here now. Okay, so let's move into the high school. So the way we're going to do this is do the district reports, so the high school and the elementary superintendent reports, and then have the staff guests do their presentation. So let's move into the high school report from Brenda now.
So we're doing some amazing things, even though it's COVID. We've had 2 students who are wanting to do honors classes who have no incompletes from the spring because they were able to pass all their classes and they're interested in being challenged. So we've met as a committee. They presented their ideas. One of them was accepted based on initial input to our committee. And then the other needed some more guidance, did some more work, and then came back. And so one of our kids is doing a history of Mapleton through interviews over the decades. So they're going to look at each year of the graduating classes and try to find somebody who's alive or somebody who is close to those who were part of that class, and do interviews and then do some sort of project that'll end up kind of just going over history over time. It'll be really an exciting project to be part of. And then the other person is doing a research project. She's very interested in allergies. She has a boyfriend who has some pretty quirky allergies that she's learning about. And so that's her motive. And she's going to talk about genetics and do a lot of research and try to kind of come up with some ideas. It's a little more vague, but with some guidance, I'm sure it'll be great too. So that's exciting because in a time where some of our students are struggling to do the minimum, we need to remember that there's a segment of our population that want to continue being challenged and are ready to do more. So we have to be, that's a delicate balance. And Michelle, I work every day with these amazing people. And so what you're seeing in that equity committee is a reflection of what our staff is. There are certainly not people that are giving up on this whole process, but they're also acknowledging challenges, which you'll hear about here in a little bit. We had more progress reports than we normally get, and progress reports go out at about 4.5 weeks, about halfway through the quarter. And the idea is that parents are then notified that their child, and they're notified that they're missing assignments and why they're getting an F. You know, is it participation? Is it attendance? Is it test scores? We look at, you know, whether they're on an IEP for special ed services or not, all that. And the number was, I knew there was gonna be a high number of kids that are struggling, but the stack was pretty lengthy, more than normal. And it didn't feel right just to mail them. So Brittany and I, the counselor and I, visited, we've about 90% of the kids so far out of the stack. We haven't gone to the kids that live in Florence yet. We're doing that tomorrow morning. And there are a couple of kids locally that we've missed. So we've gone to every home of a kid that's in the middle of our high school that's not passing, and we've asked them, what can we do to support? What's going well? What's not? We just continued check-ins. There are some kids that just don't have connectivity. That's its own beast. But for a lot of kids, this is just really hard. And so I felt very appreciated by the families. They were like, thank you for coming out. You could tell some of them hadn't seen people other than their family for a while, so that was fun. Obviously, we don't go in the house. We just, stand on the front lawn. And so it's been hard because the struggles are real, but it's also been heartwarming that we've been able to like check in with families, and they report, our staff, we reach out every week to the families. So our staff members have chosen which families are going to reach out based on, whether they're already connected or if they want a connection with certain people. And so that's being well received. I think a lot of things, I think we're doing the best we can under the circumstances, but the circumstances are really, really challenging. And the equity, it's fascinating when we talk about equity. The access to the technology and things it really shows an inequity in our community, as well as most communities, I think, in Oregon. There are a handful of families that are just like now with the hotspots are getting on for the first time and starting to get that flow going. So that's exciting. Yeah. When Jody talks about trick-or-treating with the little ones, we're doing the same thing at the high school. So she'll mention, I don't want to go into she'll go into more detail with that. We've got Molly all over that. She's one of our social science teachers. Any questions about what's going on at the middle school, high school? So those are some exciting things and some hard things going on.
Did you want to speak to the staff engaging in the nonviolent communication workshop that Julene brought to us?
I was guessing that Jody was going to talk about that, but I'll give you is that great? If I can, okay, I'll talk about it first, or maybe. So yes, Julene, as a guest speaker, I don't know what the parameters are on her, but she knows more. It was a great conference for those of us who were able to attend. I attended the one with the certified staff. It was good because I think for a lot of us, when we reflected, he brought some strategies in that we all know or should know about how to really listen, have empathy, try to meet the person. I think our students have a harder time with it, many of them do, so I think it was good to look at it through the lens of as a teacher, but also just as a human on this earth, it's always good to remember, full disclosure, the night before I probably didn't have the most patience with my husband. And so the night of that workshop, I laughed. I said, oh, guess what I learned today? How to be a little nicer. So he came in and he talked about his own personal successes and struggles. One of the things he jokes about is he was married for 20 years, probably would be married still if he had some of these strategies under his belt. But it's just about role playing and practicing how to truly, truly hear the other person. Because so many times when we're in that, in those heated moments or in tough, we disagree, whether it's politics or whatever, it's really easy to shut down and it's really easy to not truly want to hear. But the only way you get to the next resolution is to listen, have some compassion, and just how to listen. And it was good. I think several of the board members attended, so I'm assuming you guys have some feedback too. But I thought
is there going to be some follow-up? Will there be follow-up? Because I know that that's like an introductory moment.
And it was, and that's, I think that the initial was kind of what we've all heard, whether you're taking classes, whether you just have been married for 32 years or whatever, these things. Absolutely, the plan is to have some follow-up opportunities where we can do some specific role play around engaging our kids in conversations, around I mean, one of the concerns that came up is how to engage parents in a way of getting them to feel supported, but also how to encourage them to kind of step up to the plate, because most parents didn't think they would ever be teachers, and society's asking for that to happen, and that's a challenge too for some of our staff, to work with parents that we are asking them for one thing and they're not able to, for whatever reason, to try to have conversation around it. So yes, there will be some role playing and some opportunities to work with him. Julene and Jody know all the answers to that, though.
So part of the follow-up is to have Brittany, our counselor, and Julene work with Steve Goldman, the presenter, on becoming on a train the trainer model, so that Julene and Brittany get more in depth with it and then can bring that training back to staff for some follow-up sessions. So that's the next steps.
Yeah, I was fortunate to attend, and I really just mostly want to say thank you very much, Julene, for bringing that training. It was, in addition to it being something that is, very, very good to learn about or be reminded of. In any case, all of the, the strategies that we talked about. I also really enjoyed the chance to be on that call with staff too. That was nice, a really nice way for us to just kind of be a little bit more involved. So it was, I guess, appreciated from, on my part. Yeah. And so thank you for bringing him and making it an opportunity that the board could participate in as well.
I actually came to the afternoon session, and there wasn't a lot of participation. I thought that Julene and Steve were really artful in trying to enliven it and make it sort of theatrical and almost believable. It was I think a tough crowd, because I think people were reluctant to actually share. So, and you kind of have to disarm to do this kind of work. So, I would imagine maybe that the morning session had more participation. Yeah. Okay. So, well, that's good. I just wanted, when we were asked, would there be follow-up, who would be interested? I wondered how many people from the afternoon crew would.
Yeah, and I also know that we purposefully separated. It might not have been the best decision, but certified and classified primarily to just have each group have their comfort level of sharing with each other. But perhaps maybe next time we'll do some more commingling of those groups, so that it's not just one group or the other. Because to be honest, just by the nature of the beast, teachers tend to be more comfortable sharing their experiences than EAs. That's just kind of the nature of the jobs. But yeah, we could look at doing that slightly different. I know Julene has all the feedback, and her hand is up.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is these trainings are better in person. I mean, I think we will all agree all meetings are better in person. And so I think that's part of it. For his comfort level as the presenter, to do it on Zoom for safety reasons. But I'm hoping that when Brittany and Julene have the additional trainings, and that they can be more offered in person. And I don't know, Julene, if you want to add something, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have not gotten many evaluation forms back. Actually, ironically, I think most people in this meeting have actually sent theirs in, which is, thank you. But I'm going to send out another email to everyone just to remind them, because quite honestly, I realized that I don't think I sent out the handouts. Like I thought I sent them to Jody, but then when I think when I forwarded, or I don't know if the handouts went along with those or not. So anyways, I'm going to send out the handouts again with that has the evaluations. And then also there was 2 demos, student teacher demos that Steve and I spent a lot of time on, that were actually like created with as a realistic way of thinking about how students might push back on some of the things that we might be asking them to do. So I'm going to send out all 3 demos so people can look at the ones we didn't get to in our session, so people can glean from those. And as far as the follow-up goes, I'm going to be looking at the evaluations, and anyone who indicated on the evaluation that they're interested in being a part of some kind of follow-up, I'll send an email out in terms of setting aside time in the future to be a part of those follow-up sessions.
Hey, Julene, I mean, I just can't emphasize how brave you are to take this on like this and bring this into, because this kind of training is hard for a lot of people, no matter what your background is. And just that you made a commitment to try to give our staff this opportunity, I love that. I really respect you for it.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
All right. Okay, let's move on to Jody with your elementary and superintendent report. You are muted though.
I remember that. You'd think by now I'd remember. I'm going to share my screen because I need to. Okay, so this is my report for Division 22 standards. So Division 22 standards and assurances have changed. So every year, there we go. So basically, Division 22 standards are our commitment to providing high quality educational experience and equitable opportunities for all students. Basically, the Division 22 standards we report on every year. We are indicating this is what we are meeting these standards to be able to provide our students with a high quality education. So the timeline has changed, and the Division 22 standards have been adjusted based on the shortened school year last year and this year starting in comprehensive distance learning. And so you can see basically they've streamlined the standards so that there's more flexibility, especially because we had distance learning for all in spring. The assurances we're reporting on are for last school year. So basically, these are the 17 current standards that we are reporting on, that we are saying, yes, we meet these requirements: diploma requirements, credit options, distance learning for all. That's a new one they added. We're meeting the needs of special education for children with disabilities, emergent bilinguals, talented and gifted. And you can see all of the 17 assurances that we are reporting on. And you'll notice in the revised timeline, we used to report on these in February for the previous school year, which was a pretty long time after the school year to report on whether or not we met the standards. And so based on the request of superintendents through ODE, they have changed the timeline. So now they're due, we have to report to the board. This is how we're meeting Division 22 standards. We have to report in October and turn in our Division 22 standard report on November 15th. So this is the timeline and the process. So I'm reporting to you in the October board meeting. We are currently meeting all of the Division 22 standards, although there's not 22 standards, there's 17 this year for us to report on for the 19-20 school year. We will then post the report on our website and upload it to ODE, Oregon Department of Ed. This is the difference right now and the changes. You can see previously there were 54 standards that we reported on that we were ensuring that we were providing to our students, and the deadline was February. Now for the 19-20 school year, they reduced it to 17 standards, and our deadline for submitting it is the 15th. We are currently compliant in all 17 Division 22 standards. And looking ahead for this year, there are some new rules adopted specifically for this school year since we started in comprehensive distance learning, and there are some that are waived. The personalized learning requirement for the diploma and modified diploma, essential skills, career-related learning standards, the vision and hearing and screening requirements that are required every year, and PE minutes per week have all been waived for this current school year. It also allows us to report, we're going to have to report that we are compliant with Ready School Safe Learners guidance, which we are. And then they made a modification to the instructional time rule for the 2021 school year. They're allowing us to add time, additional 60 hours for staff professional development and an additional 60 hours for parent-teacher communications. In addition to the 30 hours we can already count as instructional hours, because districts this year with our comprehensive distance learning all districts will struggle to meet the instructional hour requirement. So they tried to make it a little bit more effective and allowing us to count parent communication time for staff development, and then parent-teacher communication is huge because we have had to have more parent communication. Any questions about that before I move on to the next? Okay. So I also want to share with you about update about the Western Lane Health Network and the clinic site funding. If you remember in June or July, I requested from Peace Harbor Hospital and the grant that we had received to update and remodel the middle school for our clinic site. I'd requested that be put on hold. There was just so much going on with Ready School Safe Learners and trying to figure out education for the fall. So we put that on hold. I have been in touch with Jason Hawkins, the CEO of Peace Harbor Hospital in Florence. We're checking in every week. Right now, the lease agreement for the grant for the building and the grant agreement are currently in the hands of PACE, our insurance company, just to ensure that before we sign any documents that we are not legally liable for things we don't want to be legally liable for. So they have to approve that. So we're kind of on hold for that right now. Jason Hawkins and I have a standing weekly meeting just to check on the update and keep that on the forefront so we don't lose out on that opportunity. Any questions? Okay. So last month, the State Board of Education passed a new rule. It's called All Students Belong. And basically it bans the display of hate symbols on school campuses in Oregon. This rule change is also, it couples with a requirement that all school districts must have a policy in effect and in place by January of 2021 to reflect the changes in policy and law. So we'll be looking at the first draft of the policy tonight, and it bans very specific hate symbols, the noose, a swastika, and the Confederate flag. There is I guess you'd call it a caveat in the law where unless it is tied to curriculum and instruction and what's being taught in the schools, that is the only exception to allow for those to be used. And I want to share with you a letter. I'm proposing that we draft a letter in collaboration with the Sayusaw School District. And they are also reviewing the letter, and it's something we need to put out to our school, our community, and our community includes Florence and surrounding areas. So I'm going to read the letter to you. It's not too long, but it really explains the purpose and the cultural need for All Students Belong. This started with a request from a student to the Oregon Department of Education, and it just kind of went from there. So this is the letter that I'm proposing that we release to and in conjunction with Sayusaw. So I'm just going to read it to you. This year, amidst a series of crises, the health and well-being of our staff, students, and communities has been our highest priority. We know that Oregon's youth and their families rely on their schools to take care of students and keep them safe. They depend on school communities to be welcoming and inclusive. We are deeply grateful for all that you do to support our school communities during difficult times. Once again, we are calling on your partnership, leadership, and spirit of community to make sure that all students and staff feel as though they belong in our schools. The Mapleton and Siuslaw school districts recognize that student health and safety are the cornerstone of education, and that all students are entitled to educational environments that are free from discrimination or harassment based on perceived race, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin, and without fear or hatred, racism, or violence. All staff and leaders are also entitled to workplaces that are free from discrimination and harassment, and visitors should be able to participate in their school communities without fearing for their well-being. Unfortunately, an increasing number of students in Oregon are reporting concerns for their safety and their ability to access their education. This prompted Governor Brown to instruct the Oregon School Board of Education to adopt the All Students Belong rule, which prohibits the display of 3 of the most recognizable symbols of hate: the swastika, the Confederate flag, and the noose, at all school events and activities, including online and distance learning. It will require districts to adopt and implement policies and procedures for addressing all in-person and distance learning school events and activities where these symbols are present. As you are aware, our youth in communities of color, members of tribal communities, and LGBTQ2 SIA+ students across Oregon are experiencing growing levels of discrimination, racism, xenophobia, and hate, both through words, actions, or symbols, and via exclusion or inequitable access to resources. No student is immune from being a target of these harmful acts of exclusion, and no member of our school community should ever be in fear of physical, mental, or emotional injury. When one person is harmed, it affects us all. As adults, we are responsible for making sure that our children are safe and that they receive the education that they are entitled to. To keep all members of our school community safe, administrators will develop and implement policies and procedures for addressing incidents where these hate symbols are present in in-person or distance learning school events and activities. These responses will not focus on disciplinary strategies like suspensions, expulsions, or similar punitive measures. Instead, we will work to educate our communities and those displaying hateful symbols about the impact of their actions with non-punitive remedial measures, unless there is a risk to health or safety. The Oregon Department of Education is providing us with guidance, resources, and educational materials that will help us to implement policies consistently and fairly and effectively. Ultimately, it will take all of us to transform these conditions that lead to hate entering into schools. This policy isn't just about the impacts on students being harmed by hate symbols. It's about creating a safe learning environment for all students and staff, one that allows for exploration and open, respectful conversation. Through our unity and your vocal support, we can ensure that schools are a place where we learn and engage in meaningful dialogue to more deeply understand and respect differences between people, where all students benefit from a safe and healthy environment, and where all can be free to receive their education without fear of hatred, racism, or violence. If you have feedback for the Oregon Department of Education, please direct your questions and comments to, and there's the email address. I went ahead and put my name and Andy G's name, as well as our school board members' names, but I wanted to put it forward to the board to look at and let you know that that is something that I'd like to be able to let Siuslaw know that we are supportive of this, and then they will address it in their November board meeting, which is it's the week before ours. So any questions about that?
No, I mean, I think it's great. I don't have any questions. There were two things I noticed on it. On the header, it said Mapleton and Siuslaw School District. You should just add an S to that, so it's district. So it says districts further down in the letter too, but I think it just should be added. And then I wondered if at the end where we say go ahead and contact ODE. I mean, I'd like to put one of our contact, like say that they could also contact us about our own implementation of it.
Sure. Yes, I can add that. That's a good idea.
Okay, those are my two things. And comment wise, I think it's great. It was a well written, and I'm very supportive of that. I know the actions that it's taking and directing us to take. So yeah, thank you for preparing it.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Do you, I mean, I think it's great and I think it's well written and thank you for putting it together. Do you expect any pushback on this at all?
I don't know. I really don't know. I obviously would be prepared for any pushback on the letter, but I don't. I think that's where the part in the letter about the educational piece, educating our students and our community about why they're considered hate symbols, is going to hopefully prevent any pushback or negative feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that there would be some pushback, whether we will hear it or not. I don't know. I expect that if there's a symbol displayed in the back of somebody's Zoom, a student's Zoom, and then that, needs to be addressed with that student, that's where we would get direct pushback probably. But I wonder, yeah, I think a lot of people will definitely look at the part about, oh, this is coming from outside or, something like that and being required of us and maybe, so, which that may be what is sparking it, but it's something that we would, we're all saying, yes, this, we agree with this is, let's we support this. So just kind of trying to make it clear that directive may originated at the state level, but that it's something that we, that we really think is important too. So, and I think the letter does do that pretty well.
Okay.
Anybody else? First though? Okay, crickets. All right, go for it.
I have an update on preschool. So I had Amber kind of give me an update to share with you guys about what's happening with preschool. So preschool learning kits are sent out weekly, and each child they have a supply box at home that they receive during orientation. It includes glue, markers, crayons, pencils, and watercolor sets. And then over the last few weeks, Amber has sent home different manipulatives for the supply box, such as clothespins, Unifix cubes, dot markers, droppers. And each week she sends activities that require different items from the supply box. So each week, preschool students receive some items that are repetitive, such as ABC booklets for letter of the week, where they color, glue, trace, read, and paint. They always get a butcher paper activity, and it's different each week and related to numbers or letters. Preschoolers receive a book of the week, list of the week, and a list of resources to get those stories, a craft related to the season, month, or letter of the week. Students were given a 3-ring binder at orientation 2, where they keep the work they need to do daily in page protector like calendar, name tracing, and writing practice, and a few seasonal and monthly items. Some of the monthly items will be kept in their binder for the year, such as their monthly self-portraits, cutting practice, and writing practice. Families will be able to see the progress over the year with their work kept in the binder. In addition to the learning kits, weekly phone conversations with parents and preschoolers. In these conversations, she gets feedback to find out what's working with their child and how she can personalize their kits to make it more engaging. Amber also has the chance to offer resources and referrals to parents if there are things they need or want to be connected to. And it's a good time to check in, build community, and build relationships. She's hoping this gives you a picture of how preschool distance learning is going for Mapleton. This is one of the preschool learning kits that she made up for me. And this is the butcher. I just have to show you because this is what Amber's doing with her day. So when people think, oh, she's a preschool teacher, we're not having preschool, she's not doing anything. So this is what she created for them for today or for this week. There's 4 dinosaurs. And then they each got dice, and you're supposed to roll the dice, count the dots, and make that many spots on the dinosaur using their dot marker. So, I mean, this is something she creates for all 11 of our preschoolers. And that's just one of the activities. And that's in here, along with the dice that went home. And then I'll just do couple more examples. Count the bugs on the web. And she has little spiders in here. So it's tied to the season. Then there's the calendar. And I'm going to guess the letter is D. So she sent D home. So she's really working hard. I know she took a class as well, an online class about engaging activities for preschool students. And there's several other activities in here that involve string. Like this is the mask for the dog. So they practice cutting out the eyes. So I just kind of wanted to share that, what's going on at the elementary and give you actually some idea of the effort that's happening. And Amber is getting tremendously positive feedback for the activities. Some of the preschool students are attending story time. A lot of our elementary students are attending the story times that we're offering daily for, we have 2 different sessions and some attend both. I will tell you, we currently are not including preschool in our limited in-person instruction planning. Amber and I have met and we both agree that if we're able to move to a hybrid model, we will include preschool in that. However, for limited in-person, it's not something that we're planning for right now. Just a couple of other updates about supporting staff and students. Our teachers are checking in daily with all of the kids and families that are not showing up either for the instructional Zoom meetings or the small group Zoom meetings. And we had our staff meeting today and Carly mentioned that our attendance this week has dramatically improved. So those calls are working. It just takes a while to get, for the calls and the resources and the strategies for us to work on. We also have student desks that we're offering to families and middle school, high school teachers, spread the word. We have about 75 old student desks that if families and students need a desk, a place to sit and put their, store their supplies and have their Chromebook on the desk when they're working, we have them. They just need to contact Carly. She's keeping track of who has what desks, and there's been several, I want to say 4 or 5 right now, that parents have come and picked up a desk, and so they have their own school space at home. So those are some of the things that seem to be helping. I've been scheduling individual meetings with staff to visit about current working conditions, concerns, thoughts, just to gauge their comfort level with in-person instruction. Checking with staff just to make sure that their needs are being met and how else I can support them. We're offering standing desks to staff that want them, just to keep them, up and moving and out and around. And so, it's about every week a couple. Yes, see, Lou has one. You can see Lou's jumping around. So, when staff want them, they just notify Brenda or they notify I, and we order one for them. They're usually here within a couple days. So it's been really well received. In fact, I got an email from a teacher or a staff member that says, "Hey, Jody, I just got the standing desk and I'm already loving it. It's so great to not sit so much. Thank you so much." So it's those little things that we can do to help keep people up and moving, because none of us are used to sitting this much in teaching because it just doesn't happen. We're encouraging people to take walks on their non-instructional time and just get outside, and we're having meetings outside if we can, and even if it's cold and a little drizzly, meeting outside just to keep everybody moving. We are also having a Halloween drive-through trick-or-treat. So next Thursday from 4 to 6, it's conference night. And we've invited any staff that want to come. They can flex their hours. People are going to drive through the high school parking lot. The high school is going to have a couple tables with stuff to hand out. And then they drive up to the elementary parking lot. There's going to be 5 tables set up. The elementary students are going to get a pumpkin, an apple, and those are from Bush's farm, kind of to take the place of, every year we go to the pumpkin patch, and we aren't able to do that this year. They're going to get a book, a packet of coloring sheets, and a bag of treats. All of the staff are going to dress up and hope we're going to cross our fingers that it's not going to rain, because it's not. And so it's kind of, in fact, today when I came in the high school after school, they were all discussing what they were going to dress up as and who was what decade, I think it was. Anyway, I think not only is this going to be good for our community, but I think it's going to be good for our staff to see the kids and the families to come through. And they all know they have to mask up. We, create a mask that fits with your costume, because we are going to, even though we're outside, we're going to ensure we're all masked up just for interactions with the families. I did visit classrooms today via Zoom, and I asked some of the elementary students what they like and dislike about CDL. They all said that they love to see their friends online since they can't see them in person. But it's hard to do, and these are quotes, this is like straight out of the kid's mouth. It's hard to do school using only the keyboard. But then the teacher reminded them they can write it and upload it to Seesaw. So that was an interesting, oh yeah, I can do that. And this is for Jessie. I love the art activities, being able to color and create things. So kudos to Jessie. I love the book we are reading because of Winn-Dixie. I don't like not having school on campus. I like that we start later than normal school. Some people have issues with the internet connection, and that makes it hard. I like that we get to see our friends too, and we can sit wherever we want at home. And this one is just priceless. I know this is word for word. I know you never thought I'd say this, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I want to go back to school. I realize school is a good thing in your life, and I love school. And the last one, I know this is hard for a lot of us, students and teachers, but we will all get through this. It's great to see my friends online since I can't really see them in person much. So I'd share those little nuggets from kids while we can. So last but not least, I have an update on the instructional model for the district. Right now we're in comprehensive distance learning. At the beginning of the year, we kind of set the timeline to reevaluate that at the end of October. Well, that's coming up pretty fast. So one thing I do want to say is, no matter what, we will be in comprehensive distance learning in some form for the remainder of the school year. Whether we are in a limited in-person instruction model, K-3 exception, hybrid instructional model, CDL is here to stay. So we need to ensure that we're providing the best possible structure we can for CDL. And so what that's going to require us to do, and I've already talked to staff about this, is asking ourselves, our students, and our families the following questions. So what is working? And we're going to celebrate those. I mean, we're going to celebrate everything from the little tiniest little positive all the way to the big honkin', we're going to have a party. But then we also need to know what isn't working. And from that list, what can we control? And that's hard for educators. We want to be able to make sure we can do this. We can control everything, and we really can't. So we need to take the list of what's not working, what can we control, and how do we adjust CDL to fix the controllables, the things we can control. So those are some of the things that we're working on to ensure that the CDL that we do offer is comprehensive and that it is appropriate for our students. So based on, and I'm going to share my screen again because I have some documents to share with you. Based on the current metrics, and here are the metrics, the only instructional model other than comprehensive distance learning that we can offer is the limited in-person instruction. And so this is these are the current metrics for state up here, and then for our county down here. Just so you kind of have a baseline of what that looks like. So the limited in-person instruction guidance, and I've kind of highlighted the important parts. Basically, what that means is we are currently in comprehensive distance learning, and we're moving to add limited in-person instruction to our instructional model. And so when we do that, these are the things we need to keep in mind. We can offer limited in-person instruction based on need, including to address all of these concerns with our students. So this is and this is something staff are going to be meeting tomorrow and Friday to talk about, is how do we prioritize the students with the most need to receive limited in-person instruction. We can offer based on educational, relational, curricular, and instructional or assessment needs. However, there are limitations. The limitations are by group size with stable cohorts. So that means no more than 10 students at a given time in a cohort, and students cannot be a part of more than 2 cohorts, including transportation, in a week. And any one staff member cannot interact with more than 3 cohorts a day and 5 a week. We can also only have them on campus for 2 consecutive hours, and it cannot be intermittent. It has to be consecutive. And then we have to ensure that it's not replacing CDL. So we still have to meet the requirements for our comprehensive distance learning. We also have to still be able to offer FAPE. And we cannot require the students to come in. It has to be completely voluntary. Now, this section that I've crossed off is...
Hey, Jody, can I just interrupt with a
I can't
question?
see you guys when I'm sharing, so you'll have to hear.
That's okay. I just busted right in there.
Good.
I a question. I'm reading that, okay, right under limited by time in the building per student. It's the time a single student or student cohort of any size can spend in the school building on a given day is limited to 2 consecutive hours and cannot be intermittent.
Mhm.
But it says in a school building. So like if there was, a class that could, meet outside or something like that, could that be in addition to the 2 hours in the building? So just a question, not that I need an answer right now. It's just really specific about in a school building. So
That is a good question, though, and I will write that down. I've been collecting questions to ask for clarification. And so that is a good one to ask. Yes, I will ask about that in the school building. So the part that I've crossed out addresses childcare. We aren't offering childcare on our school district property, so I've crossed it out because it does not pertain to anything that we're doing. So I didn't want us to get sidelined by that. And then this one compares the difference between the hybrid and comprehensive distance learning with limited on-site interaction. So limited on-site or limited in-person instruction is on the right, and it talks about the difference. So those are things that, and staff have been given this as well. So there's lots of factors that determine the structure of limited in-person instruction and the number of students allowed on campus. Transportation is going to be a huge factor in how many we can bring on campus. We don't have to offer transportation, but we will to the best of our ability. But though the limit in the number of students per cohort, it's 10, and it's 10 in whether it's transportation or an in-class learning. So the limit on the number of cohort staff can be in contact with is another factor to think about on a daily and a weekly basis. The limit on the number of cohort students can be a part of. Having enough custodial staff available to schedule for cleaning between the cohort use in classrooms, bathrooms, buses, entryways, hallways. Considering staff availability and willingness to work with limited in-person instruction students, and ensuring that limited in-person instruction doesn't replace comprehensive distance learning. So we have to align it with our schedules and instruction. So as we move towards limited in-person instruction, the timeline this week high school and elementary staff are meeting to focus on developing a student list with criteria for limited in-person support and proposing a schedule of what this looks like. You know, who are we going to target for students for support first, starting small, and then once that gets the routines and structures get in place, and we hopefully have the ability for more transportation and or parents transport, we can expand the list. Once that is done, from October 26th, and I kind of looked at the days through like November 4th, we're going to be developing the transportation options. So taking the list of students that staff feel really need to have that first initial support, developing transportation schedule, routes, updating the blueprint. And so these are the different parts of the operational blueprint for reentry. Right now, currently, because we're in comprehensive distance learning, we have filled out section 0. So we have to address all 3, 1, 2, 3 sections: public health protocols, facilities and school operations, and our response to an outbreak. So all of those have to be updated. And I will start on that hopefully this weekend. But I do that in consultation with our school nurse, with Lane County Public Health, and with Sue Wilson, who is currently the Lane ESD go-to person for anything that has to do with Ready School Safe Learners. Once the blueprint is updated and all of the components are addressed and met, then that is sent to Lane County Public Health. They already have our communicable disease management plan. So both of those have to align. So what you say you're doing in your communicable disease management plan in relation to COVID has to line up with what you're saying you're going to do in the public health protocols and in the response to outbreak in your operational blueprint. So those have to align. So I send that to Lane County Public Health, and then we have to have training for all staff. And the training is in limited in-person safety procedures, protocols, and expectations, as well as contact tracing logs for students and staff. What's the expectation? Who fills out the logs? Symptom screening protocols for students. And then we have to review the COVID-19 school scenarios toolkit. So there's a toolkit and a spreadsheet that says if this happens with an infection or exposure, then you do this or you do this. Or so I want all staff to be trained and to learn about that. Then once we receive notification from Lane County Public Health that they, confirming receipt of our updated blueprint, it's posted on our website, then we can operate within the plan that we've developed. However, there are also several factors that have to take into account before we move into limited in-person instruction. And the biggest one is the county and state metrics. I do need to say that this week was the timeline, and again, end of October, early November, for the governor to reevaluate the metrics to determine if there's a need to adjust them to make them more favorable for school openings. So there's a meeting tomorrow with some superintendents around the state. And then I've actually been invited to represent small rural schools with ODE's conversation Friday about the metrics and possible adjustments to the metrics. I know they're looking at the metrics for the state of California and the state of Washington, which are a lot more favorable for opening schools in-person instruction. So because county and state metrics is a huge factor when you look at our county metrics, and that the test positivity rate continues to go up, as well as the number per 100,000. It also impacts us because 45% of our staff live outside our school catchment. And I mean, I do too. So that's not a negative on anybody who lives outside of our school district, but it's something we have to consider when we're looking at the infection rate in our county. Right now, as far as we know, there are no confirmed cases of COVID-19 among school staff or students in the past 14 days. I am working really closely with Lane County Public Health to ensure that we get notified. There's been some miscommunications throughout the county on notifying schools of infections that involve staff or students or student families. Some of that's challenging because not a lot of people, some people aren't willing to share or disclose a connection with the school. And they're really having a hard time contact tracing some of the infections. There is a real issue with COVID shaming. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, how could you get me sick? Or blaming people because you've been exposed. And so there's a real reluctance on some people's parts to share contact tracing information. And so that's really hindering Lane County Public Health ability to know where the infections are coming from and even to notify people. And then lessons learned from other school districts who've opened. You know, I'm lucky I get to talk to all these people that have blazed this path before us so that we can maybe not make the same mistakes that they've made and learn from them. And they're very willing to share. So while we're definitely planning to move into limited in-person instruction, there are several factors that have to be taken into consideration prior to allowing students on campus. I just kind of wanted to put all that out there. Any questions about that? I really only have one more thing to say.
I see that Elisa's hand is up. Elisa, do you have a question? Press your space bar.
There we go. I'm on an iPad, so I have no space bar.
Oh.
I'm just curious what the earliest ETA is for limited in-person instruction.
Jesse, I think it was Jesse that asked that question in the staff meeting, but Elisa wasn't there. So, and
that's right.
Yeah, I realized that. I'm like, I thought I answered that, but you weren't there. So based on the timeline for me to get the operational blueprint updated and approved, I would think at the earliest, the second or third week of November. And that's getting the plan to Lane County Public Health, but also needing to look at where are the metrics headed in our community and in our county. So, but I think if everything were to fall into place, which I think is what you're asking, if everything fell into place like it's supposed to, when would we be able to start? And second or third week of November. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to share about was athletics.
Okay, before you do that,
Yeah.
I do have a question too. Of course, I always do. And I'm wondering about I feel like there's going to need to be, I know we've been communicating with families and students a ton, and I feel like that successful implementation of limited in person, and then, you know, hopefully that's preparing us to be more easy to transition into hybrid. But I feel like it's going to be reliant on our community a huge amount in order to support that in a way that we can continue doing it. So trying to do, you know, look at what sort of maybe, you know, communications that we can prepare and talking points and stuff to try and, you know, try to let people know that they're sort of a part of our success in that as well. So
yes, that's part of the planning process. You know, yes, we're meeting this week to talk about students and the schedule, but it's also, we have to have a plan. How are we going to get the word out to families? How are we going to find out from these, you know, these families, yes, we want to participate. No, we don't want to participate. And that's going to take some communication. I know at the high school level, each staff member has students that they check in on. And then at the elementary, it's by class. So I'm going to rely heavily on the teachers to communicate, but having the talking points, having the explanation, having this is the flow chart we're using to determine eligibility for limited in person. These are the safety procedures in place. This is the schedule. This is right. That's all going to come from the teachers who've developed the relationships with the kids.
For like a PR campaign, I was thinking, I mean, I agree that that's one way to implement that PR. portion of it, and is an important component. I was thinking too of maybe a newspaper article and whatever other ways we can ways that we can really say to, to the community, like we're in this, like everybody's actions affect each other here in this situation. So
Yeah, and even a letter to the community, to parents and community members, and okay.
Yeah, because I mean, we've heard from students and families, they want school open, we want school open. Let's, like what are the ways we can make sure, do our most, to make it happen. So anyway, Brenda had a hand up.
Just one of my thoughts on challenges is there are going to be some kids and families that are like, why is my child not chosen? And so that's part of the planning, is really having a specific criteria list, and then being able to relay that, because I think that's going to be hard, because there are going to be some kids that want to be here that we are not going to be able to allow. With all the restrictions, we can't allow them all.
Right, and there is a flow chart. I referenced a flow chart, and there really is a flow chart that I've gotten from another school district that they use. That is, and Brenda will be sharing it with the high school staff, and I'll be sharing it with the elementary staff. And it's an eligibility determination for limited in-person instruction, and it just goes right through it, And so I think just having those clear guidelines on why are we doing limited in-person, what is the purpose, and then fitting the kids that need the most support under.
Yeah, and looking at that list of requirements and stuff, all I could think of was, I'm so glad we're small, because, there are a lot of ways that our kids do fit into those categories, most of them or all of them in some way. And, that we're small means we can reach a high percentage of them in person. So.
So the only other thing I had to say was about athletics, and we will begin athletic practices once students are allowed on campus through limited in-person instruction. So it does not make sense to have athletes on campus for practice when we aren't allowing students on campus. So to me, those go hand in hand. So that's kind of where athletics is at. So I think that's it for my update. I know they always seem to take a long time, but I got a lot to say.
Yeah, no, it's great. I appreciate the chance to hear about it. So, yeah. Any questions for Jody from any? Okay, I'm seeing Mary Ellen shake her head. Marilyn and Andrea, I can't see you at all. So you're just gonna have to be really loud, or, or occasionally check in. So because I wouldn't know if you can't hear. So, okay. Let's move on then. We've got the middle school, high school staff here to present, and thank you all for attending and for, sitting through the first half of the updates. We really wanted to make sure we had those to kind of help place your presentation into some context for board members who don't hear a lot about the school in general. So the more we get, the better. So, well, I didn't mean that the right way. We do hear about it, but it's, it's not as much as there is to hear. So anyway, at this point, I'd love to turn it over to you all. I know you have some, you've got worked out who's speaking when, so you take it away.
All right, I think I'm first, right, Julene? Okay, so I have a very brief statement that I wanted to add to the work that has taken place. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I know many agree. And here it is. I have appreciated the hard work and thoughtful consideration that the administration has put into planning, communicating, and implementing everything that's been going on, especially more recently regarding limited in-person instruction. And I'm hoping that our statement as a staff, our staff statement, contributes to a cooperative, safe, and student-centered environment. That is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie.
I think I'm next. Jaren, can you, oh yeah, you're on it, Jaren. Okay. So One of the challenges I think that we had, that the staff had, and kind of talking about stuff, was this issue is really, really complicated. It has lots of little pieces, and it's really easy for people to disagree on pieces. And our goal was really to try to come up with something that we felt like everybody could agree with. And so through a lot of conversations, we were able to come up with a statement that all of the middle school and high school instructional staff could stand behind. And that's what you see here on the screen, which is that we believe that limited in-person instruction is an essential tool for supporting our most vulnerable students, and recommend its implementation at the earliest possible date, provided that staff members and families maintain self-determination over the safety of their individual work environment. So yeah, so there that is. And you guys got to ask questions if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep rolling because Julian's got me on like a schedule. 7 minutes, I was told.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jolene.
Wow. Okay. So I have changed the color of the slide to let you know that the green is my color. This is my stuff. Whereas the blue, that was everybody's stuff. So everything that happens from here on out is like I'm solely responsible for. Okay. So what I kind of want to try to do is I want to explain, I'm looking really past limited in person. And I think that I personally believe that we should open to the greatest possible extent that we can. I do believe that staff and families should have the option to do distance learning if that's what they feel like is safest for them as a family. And I'm gonna explain why. It's, as I was sort of putting this, it's an argument really, as I was kind of putting this together, there's lots of pieces. I made a written statement. I'm happy to share that written statement if people are interested in seeing it. I think I'll go into more detail in the written statement than I'm going to be able to here today just because of time. So yeah, all right. So the first part of what I want to think about is I just want to talk about the limitations of CDL. And one way I think that's really helpful to think about it is CDL is a system, right? And it's the students, it's the staff, it's families, it's houses, school building, the equipment. You wouldn't think that internet providers would be something that we would be dependent on. But it turns out that if you're in Deadwood, you have great internet service. And if you live in Indian Creek, you're toast. And like, that's got nothing to do with what we do. That's just a fact of who the providers are in those different communities. And so one of the challenges here, and this is a challenge throughout everything that we're doing, we don't have a lot of control over most of those things. And some of the things that we traditionally have quite a bit of control over, namely the students, we don't actually, we have very, very limited control over what the students are doing. So it's as you think about CDL, it's not just how good is the product that the teacher is spitting into their computer, because what we really have to think of is how does that entire system work to deliver an education to a kid. The second thing, at the middle school and high school level, we've done this for 4 months basically, because we did it for 2.5 months in the spring. We're about 1.5 months in right now. So we know a lot about how it's going to work. I would say that the system is a lot better than last spring, and it's improved in all areas. The students are better, the staff are better, families have a lot of families have stepped up to make this happen. Houses has improved in the sense that families have created workspace for their kids. The school bought Wi-Fi hotspots. Families have stepped up their technology spending, so that the whole system has gotten a lot better, and we can still be better. There's going to be families that we can help troubleshoot their Wi-Fi. The staff is going to get better at delivering instruction online. The kids are going to get better at technology. You know, this afternoon I was helping a kid, a high school kid, learn to copy and paste. They did not know how to copy and paste. And that's like an essential survival tool right now. So the kids will get better, you know, but I do think that we see the limits, and I just kind of want to talk about what we see. The kids break out into 3 basic groups, and I named them succeeding, struggling, and dropping out. And I kind of want to define what those are. So kids who are succeeding, they're coming to class every day. They've got their camera on if their Wi-Fi permits. They're participating in the activities, and they're turning all their stuff in. Those kids are getting grade-wise A's, B's, and C's. They're getting probably somewhere between half and 2/3 of the education that they would get if they were in the building. We have less time with them. The technology makes everything slower. There are things that you can't do, even with like breakout rooms. It's really hard to do discussions and small group work. Those things are really challenging. And a lot of those things, unfortunately, lead to the depth of thought that you're trying to achieve. A lot of times, like, yeah, we could pile on more work and give them a mountain of homework, but it would necessarily be a mountain of busy work. And I don't feel like that's necessarily the piece. The piece that they're missing is really the thinking and the engagement with each other. And with an instructor, it's really hard over Zoom. You guys know how meetings over Zoom are. They're just slower and awkward. Anyway, that's the succeeding group. They're getting about 50% to 2/3 of the education they would be. Then there's a struggling group, and that's a group of kids whose attendance is inconsistent. That's not always their own choice. You know, I think all the teachers would agree that we have students who literally will log back in 4 or 5 times a class period because their internet just keeps kicking them out, and they keep coming back. It's amazing. It's really impressive. Yeah, or they're frustrated. You know, they don't like. There's some kids who really don't have the technology skills. I was working. This is just another student that I was working with. Could not navigate between open tabs in a browser. Like, couldn't look at like a slideshow for information and then go to a Google Doc to like answer questions because they weren't able to successfully click on the tabs to go. This is a high school kid. And for those kids, it's just so frustrating that they're trying. But, you know, I would say their attendance is about 50% and their grades are in the 20 to 70% range. And then there's the final group is the kids that are dropping out, and they literally are dropping out. There's kids that we've seen maybe once all year. There are kids who I think parents make them log in, but they log in, they leave their camera off. They're non-responsive throughout class. So are they there? Maybe. Technically speaking, we have to mark them present, but in reality, you know, they're either in a different room or they're, I don't know, watching Netflix. They can't watch Netflix because Jared blocked it, but they're not engaged with what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah, so those are the 3 groups, and I'm going to show some data from my classes. But I wanted you to have those kind of rough definitions, and they are rough. It is not a scientific. This would not pass peer review. Those are just rough. They're artistic groups. Okay. So here's the grade level breakdown for the middle high school. And this data is only for my classes. It's flawed, and I'm going to tell you why it's flawed here in a sec. But I will say that I spoke with, I asked all the teachers at the high school to review the data. And the ones that I spoke with confirmed that in general, their experience matches my data. So across the bottom down here, those are the grade levels. Up the side are the percent breakdown. So those aren't absolute numbers, those are percents. different classes have different sizes. You'll notice that there's a general upward trend from 7th through 12th grade. I just think that that tracks maturity. I also know with the 7th graders, there's a big gap in technology skills because they did not do online CDL type work last spring. They mostly did packet works last spring. So their skills are behind, so they're struggling a lot more. One place that my data is kind of messed up, and I'm just gonna bring this like lovely pink circle over here. I have 2 classes, pre-calculus and engineering, that are, both classes are kids who are self-identified college-bound kids. And they're in the succeeding group. They've chosen to do it. They're all 16, 18 years old. They're mature. They have a goal. They have an external goal that they're trying to achieve. The classes are optional. They don't have to be there. So I think that kind of has bumped up that number. So that green bar for the 11th and 12th grade is a little bit higher probably than it should be and probably is for the rest of the classes. Any questions about the data? Okay. And then I also wanted to pull out the data about the IEP students. And again, these are just my students. And so typically you're looking at kids who are in middle school science, 8th grade math, and chemistry, which is the standard high school science classes here. So you'll see first here, these are the total numbers. This is the total student population. So it does include the IEP students are folded into these numbers. Again, I think the height of that green bar is I think this is a little bit inflated, again, by those 2 classes I have of the college-bound kids. But, if you look, you'll see that, there actually are quite a number of kids who are doing pretty well academically by this definition. And again, remember that's succeeding counts as like the 50% to 2/3 of what they would probably normally get. If we come over here and look at the IEP group, you'll see that they're disproportionately represented in that dropping out group. And I think Elisa's going to talk more about some of the reasons for that. But it is a really glaring thing that as we think about limited in-person instruction, this is one of the real motivators for me is that CDL is not working for this group of kids. Okay. Questions about any of this data? All right. And then here's my last slide. And one of the things that I wanted to try to do is thinking about opening, and this is really, I think, one of the big challenges with thinking about COVID and the decisions we make, is that we're really thinking about risk analysis. And one of the problems with risk analysis is that it's all hypotheticals. Like it's not like, should I buy the 77 Cadillac Eldorado like with the baby blue interior, or should I get the like 2015 minivan, right? Like I know how much those cars cost. I can like analyze that out, and it's very straightforward. Here, everything is unknown. So it's really, really hard. But kind of this is kind of how I break it out. I want to start with the risks of CDL, because that's what we've been talking about. We know, this is kind of the first piece I want to talk about, we know that the kids are getting educational deficits. We're watching them happen in real time. We know the kids are having major mental health struggles. We watch them in real time. We talk to the kids. I went to Randy's to buy JoJo's, and I talked to a parent for 20 minutes about his kid and how much his kid was struggling with this. I do want to put in a point here. I think Elisa and Julene are going to talk about this more. I am hearing a lot more from the parents of kids who are only children, that those kids are really having a rough time because of the isolation. Third point, physical safety is going to be in danger for some students. We know that school is the safest place for kids, and that home and friends' houses is really pretty dangerous for kids. This is a risk that we don't see, it's hidden. DHS calls are way, way down, and the reason they're down is not because abuse isn't happening, but because teachers and counselors and administrators aren't reporting it because they can't see it because it's at home and not in the building. Kids aren't coming to school where we can talk to them. So we know that physical safety is increased by having the kids doing CDL. And then the last piece is there's going to be lifelong health damage associated with the loss of education. That every bit of education that a kid has improves their health lifelong. It decreases their chance of obesity, of diabetes, of substance abuse, mental health issues. And so we can't see, we don't know what's going to happen to these kids when they're 40 or 50 or 60. But statistically, not educating the kids is going to cause them health damage later in their lives. So that's CDL. That's the kind of damage from CDL. And then we talk about opening. Come over here, and in this case, I'm really focused on the kids. I'm not thinking about staff or families at this particular moment. And just this piece, the risk of illness for the kids is very low. Secondly, it is true that students that have pre-existing medical conditions are going to have significantly higher risk. And it's also true that there's going to be risk to family members. That risk varies. It depends on who the kid's living with, frankly. But I want to circle these two. And the reason I want to circle these two is because if we offer a plan where we're offering CDL for staff and families who want CDL, who don't feel safe being in the building, and if we offer in-person instruction for families and staff who want to do that, then those risks that I've circled in pink, those students and families don't have to face those risks. And so then in the balance, what you see is we have all the risks that CDL brings to the kids. And we're balancing that against the risk of illness to the kids, but the risk of illness to the kids is really low. And this thinking of this cost benefit brings me back to kind of my original statement back here all the way at slide 2. So that's why I think we should always, as the state says we can open, I think we should open to the fullest extent possible, while giving staff and families that option. If they say, hey, I don't feel safe, they should have the option to continue CDL. Thank you. And I know I didn't do 7 minutes. I have no idea how long it was, but it was less than the 60 I threatened.
It was, I think, 19. So yeah.
You guys got to tell me to speed up. All right, well, thank you guys for listening, and I'm sorry I took so long.
Thank you.
Concerning.
Are there questions for Lou, right? Or I think maybe we should go ahead and move on and have Julene and Elisa present, and then maybe do questions let's do that.
Yeah, I got 19 minutes also, Mizu. All right. Can someone just, can someone unmute and say, I hear you?
Yeah.
You're doing great, Julie.
Can hear you.
Okay, great. All right. So I wrote out everything I want to say, and my goal, and I'm going to set myself a timer 1 second, is to be done in 4 minutes. So that's my goal. All right. And this doesn't count yet. So just for if anyone else is also timing me. All right. So
I am.
before I begin, I would also, like Jesse, like to express my appreciation for all the time, energy, emotion, and sleepless nights that Jody and Brenda have invested in planning, thinking, problem solving, and communicating with and supporting the staff, students, and families throughout the pandemic. I know that a lot goes on behind the scenes and that many factors, many of which I am unaware, must be considered in every decision. And sometimes there really are no great options. So I definitely recognize that. And I'd also like to say that I personally am grateful to be a teacher in this particular district, because I've talked to other staff and teachers from other districts around Lane County who have not had the same level of support, communication, and consistency that we've had here since last March. Consequently, I'm truly grateful for Jody and Brenda and their leadership, and I can say that I have agreed with nearly 100% of the decisions that have been made regarding our district's response to the state mandates brought about because of the coronavirus. Today, I'm speaking as one high school teacher advocating for our students with a specific request to ensure that our students' voices and needs are heard. Specifically, I'm advocating for the incorporation of limited in-person instruction as a much needed addition to our current CDL model, while simultaneously keeping students, staff, and families in the community as safe as possible from the coronavirus. Despite the many challenges of distance learning, there have been some positives, as Lou mentioned. As educators, we have grown in our ability to utilize technology and find new ways to engage students. And we wouldn't have necessarily found these or pursued them unless our circumstances required it. So that has been a huge positive. Some students have definitely grown in their understanding of and use of technology. And this understanding is preparing them with transferable skills that they can take with them in their future careers. As a staff, we have developed new systems of communication through student and guardian contact spreadsheets, student progress spreadsheets, tracking systems to help students complete coursework, and other means. As a whole, we have significantly increased communication with students and families, with every middle and high school student having a designated staff person to check up on them weekly, if not more, through phone calls, emails, text messages, Zoom meetings, home visits, parking lot conversations, etc. Also, the administration, staff, and students are doing an amazing job of rising to the challenge and overcoming a lot of obstacles. There are just, as you can see, a lot of tremendous positives that I think we'll be able to carry with us into the future once we have come through this pandemic. However, despite the positives, there are a number of downsides to the current CDL education model, and I believe I have a duty as an educator to ensure that I advocate for our students, especially those whose voices might not be heard by an adult in the community who is able or willing to share the information with the appropriate people in charge of decision making. So here are some of the negative effects that I see of a pure CDL model. So this means not having any type of face-to-face interaction at all. As Brenda mentioned, we have a significant number of Fs this year, and we have a lot of remaining incompletes from last year. Students who typically struggled to engage with, even with in-person teaching, still managed to make progress academically with the direct in-person support of the instructional staff at the middle school and high school. But with CDL only, some of these students are now disengaged either partially or entirely. Some students who are at high risk of dropping out with in-person instruction have done so completely in our current model. There are students who have been present on Zoom once all year, and we're just about ready to finish up week 6. New students have few opportunities to really connect with our staff. We actually have a number of new students who've moved to our community, and we don't really get to interact and build relationships with them right now because I personally don't get to see some of them. I don't have them in my own classes. Nearly every student I have talked to makes references to missing school, implying that what we're doing now doesn't really feel like school to them. A common response to the genuine question of how a student is doing is meh, and that's really what they say, like meh. And when I ask more specifically what they mean, they just say like they don't like online school, they hate online school, they miss their friends, those kinds of things. Our IEP students, who Elisa's going to discuss in more detail, and our students who are at high risk for dropping out are not the only students who are unsatisfied with the current CDL model. Some of our high achieving students have either considered or chosen a different education option because of having to move to only remote learning. One student has moved to a different district. 2 students have chosen a different online school program that's more established and experienced with online education. And in my conversations with a number of students and families, the option of homeschooling has been brought up a number of times, though not every family has actually taken that step yet. Many parents and students feel that if there's no face-to-face interaction with teachers and peers, they might as well try an alternative to what the public school has to offer. We can hope that students and families' feelings will change in time and once we have come through the pandemic. But there's also the chance that some parents may choose the new education program that they're either considering or using over the current educational program being offered by the Mapleton School District. Not having any form of in-person instruction available as an option to students and families, I believe, is putting the future sustainability of our district at risk. Also, and perhaps one of the biggest challenges and the part of CDL that concerns me the most is the effect that it's having on our students' mental and emotional health. Excuse me. What finally pushed me to email Jody and Brenda last week was receiving an email from one of our high achieving students saying that she was not able to be in class because she could not find the motivation to get out of bed. So this is like one of our straight A students who regularly found the motivation to come to school when it was in person. Unfortunately, due to a lack of face-to-face interaction, some of our students are losing motivation to engage and others are feeling isolated and hopeless that they can overcome the obstacles that are in front of them. Furthermore, students are lacking opportunities to engage with staff, peers, and our school counselor in order to process what they are feeling and experiencing during these difficult times. And last year, our school counselor made herself so available. And when we had in-person instruction, kids were utilizing her, and it was really great to be able to say, hey, why don't you go talk to Brittany? And she was always available, and the kids came back feeling better and having processed some things. So I really think that would be great to utilize her expertise and to help our kids. Also, CDL has compounded the challenges for students who are not on track to graduate. A number of these students are doing online credit recovery courses through Edgenuity, and I'm currently the teacher who tracks these students' progress and regularly checks in with these students and families. Despite multiple contacts to students and guardians, we have many students who are behind on their online courses, and even some students that are at 0% completion when they should be at about 33 or 35%. While it is not abnormal, okay, for students to be behind on their online classes, because we have that struggle even with in-person school, what is abnormal is for these students to have almost no interaction with the school staff person who can support them and regularly hold them accountable. So I don't actually have some of these students during CDL during the school day right now. So my interactions with these students are almost entirely by email and phone. And these online students no longer have the academic support and accountability I was able to provide to them during in-person school. Technology is, as Lou alluded to, is getting in the way of many of our students learning the academic content. This is happening partly because there are just some learning activities that are not humanly possible to do through Zoom. However, the main challenge to technology presents to learning the content is that many students are unfamiliar with the technology and are spending so much time and mental energy trying to figure out the technology that they lose the energy and motivation to actually learn the content. It would be much easier to provide technology support if we had the ability to invite some of our struggling students and students that are new to technology to the school and troubleshoot and see what they're seeing on their computers in real time. Also, CDL has placed a greater burden on families to facilitate and support their child's education. While I agree that ultimately it is the family's right and responsibility to choose how best to educate their children, it has become extremely apparent to me that many of our parents, due to work responsibilities, health issues, lack of experience, and lack of teacher training, are unable to adequately support their children. This is the case in general, but it is especially true when the students are taking more advanced courses, like especially in the high school classes, and are using technology and programs that are unfamiliar to the parents and guardians. Normally, my phone calls home to students and guardians would naturally lead me into inviting struggling students into my classroom after school. This in-person option provided the student with a helpful and supportive environment to work and a staff person to demonstrate to both the guardians and students that a staff person cares about the student and family, and they are not in this struggle alone. We're all on the same team together. With our current CDL model and no limited in-person instruction, I cannot invite even one student into my classroom to help him or her with their schoolwork currently. I'm able to talk to students in the parking lot and around the school, but I can't invite them into their school to help them with one of the things that is most challenging to them right now, and that's school. As I've been brainstorming ways to help our students with other teachers, we have thought about looking to other facilities throughout the community that would allow teachers on their own time to provide the technological, educational, and moral support to our students and families that we are currently unable to offer in our school buildings. To me, it is a shame to not utilize our school's amazing, upgraded, beautiful, spacious facilities to meet some of the basic needs of our students and families. I'm willing to find other means to safely meet these needs if necessary, but I'm hopeful that with some of the planning for limited in-person instruction that is scheduled, I will eventually not have to consider other facilities outside of our school district to meet these needs on my own time. Due to the increased cases of the coronavirus, I realize that the state of Oregon may rescind the limited in-person instruction option. I also realize that CDL is likely to stay for the remainder of the school year, as Jody mentioned. And as a staff, I know we will keep finding new ways to get better and improve our instruction through Zoom. However, due to the clear limitations of CDL, I believe that it is worth the time and energy to develop a plan for limited in-person instruction that is physically safe for staff, families, and students, and also provides the necessary support for our most vulnerable students and families. And my hope is that we can do this before they completely disengage and start giving up on public education altogether. So that's what I had to say, and I do appreciate the time that I went way over as well that you've given me to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, that's my turn. I'm going to try to be fairly short. I just have a few notes. I'm a special ed teacher at the middle and high school, and I see part of my job is advocating for our students who are on IEPs. And so in that role, I want to, you've heard a lot of data and specific situations. I kind of want to put you in the place of a student who has a learning disability. So I want you to imagine that you have a learning disability and school is hard. It's hard. Other kids are catching on to reading and math and all of that, and you're not getting it. And you know you're not getting it. And you kind of feel stupid a lot of the time. And school is not, the academic part of school, not so much fun. And you've struggled year after year after year, 8 years, you're a ninth grader and you're in high school, and school's hard. But you come because there's other stuff. You've got friends that you get to hang out with and see that you might not get to see because they live, our district is huge geographically, I'm sure you know. And you don't get to see them because they live way the heck away from where you live. And school is warm and it's safe. There's people there who will help you. There's meals, hot meals. I mean, we're currently providing meals, but they aren't hot meals. They are cold, peanut butter sandwiches. They're perfectly wonderful. I don't want to put anything against Kelly because she's doing an amazing job. And it's not the same as having that salad bar and hot meals. It's a welcoming place where kids feel welcomed. I mean, I have kids that I light up when I see them, and I know all of our staff does. Mapleton Middle and High School staff are pretty amazing in that way. They may be involved in sports, and that may be the one thing that's keeping them motivated to do their homework and come to school. We see kids who, when their sports seasons are over, attendance drops off. And they don't have any of that right now. And I know, you know, Jody has said when we start with limited in-person instruction that we'll be able to start sports practices. And I'm seeing how the metrics are going in the state. And I don't know if the state's going to come in and say, sure, go ahead and have your sports program. I suspect that it's not going to be that way. And so these kids, they've struggled so hard, and now we've taken away all the good stuff of school. And we put them in a situation where they still have that hard stuff, but in addition to the hard academics, they have to struggle through technology, which is hard. Sometimes I spend almost the entire class period helping my kids with special needs at access through technology. I literally spent 20 minutes yesterday trying to help a kid find a document that he needed for my class. That's time I can't spend teaching because I can't go forward without him having that. And, you know, I gave the other kids stuff to do, but it wasn't what I wanted them to do. And that's not that kid's fault. It really, and in fact, it totally wasn't his fault because for reasons, who knows, Google didn't give it to him. Gave every other kid in the class that document, but not him. I don't know why. And so then we had to do a complete workaround so that he could access the activity. And so that was very frustrating to me and frustrating for the student. A lot of these students have parents who struggled in school, which means the parents aren't able to help them. They can't provide that support. They can't provide the technology support because the technology we're using wasn't around when those parents were in school. And so I want you to think about how these kids have struggled for years. And now we have taken away supports and added to the struggle. And as Lou pointed out, we have students who come in and get the technology kicks them out, technology kicks them out, 4 or 5 times a class. And at some point, we would all quit. You know, at what point would you quit? At what point would you say, you know what? I have given it my very best effort and it isn't working and I'm tired and I'm frustrated. I know a lot of us staff have gone home angry or in tears. I know I have dripped many tears over this whole thing, over my frustrations for my students. You know, there have been sleepless nights. And it hurts me. I mean, I saw Julene's emotion and it hurts me to look at what my students, my special ed students who are trying mightily and they are getting slapped down and slapped down and slapped down for reasons that are not their fault. And so I agree totally with Lou's statement of let's open the schools to the full extent that the state allows, because we're not serving our kids on IEPs well right now. We're serving them to the best of our abilities, but I can't pretend that it's good because it's not good. It's the best we can do, but not great. So that's really what I want to say. I appreciate the effort that people do, but these kids aren't being served well. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for making me cry like 10 times and still have tears in my eyes. And I really, I mean, it's yeah, I appreciate the time and the energy and the effort and the caring and the emotion that is just clear through all the work that you've done for instruction these last months, and then also in the work that you've done to think about this and really decide, you know, what you are wanting to advocate for, and then coming to us and you know, just letting us know what some of the realities you're seeing are. And
Can I say something real quick?
Mm-hmm.
There might be a couple minutes as well. I definitely came down the hall and made sure I'm in my room, even though I've been listening quietly, just because I would speak and have a student in the house. So speaking as a mom, a fellow employee, or former employee, and I get Elisa's side working in special ed before too. I can only imagine, especially where I only look at it as my side. Where I have a student who relatively does well in school, and everything Lou stated on his presentation completely fit the mold of that. And I've discussed that with Lou last week as well, and I didn't even know, where you're saying you're seeing the only childs are affected even more. That's her. I wouldn't have known that was worse for her necessarily. I see that she doesn't know one to be at home with, 2 working parents that work out of town. I try to be home as often as I can. She's at least able to take care of technology, but she could care less about school. And when Jolene spoke and said those types of things, that's going to be Morgan down the road. She has absolutely no enthusiasm to do this, hates it like this, needs that interaction. Is struggling, and then we struggle as parents of like, it's not like we're bad parents, but how much do you want to fight with your kid? You can harp on them, but that's not well spent time. I try to help her with things, so it's tough, and I get it. And her emotional well-being is horrible. Now thinking she's a depressed kid, what's going on? I blame it on, hey, you're a 13-year-old girl. That sucks in general. This life would suck right now. Now it sucks more. And I knew that at 13, but now it's worse. So I get it. Totally love what you guys are trying to do. That's just my kid who's capable of doing technology and all the things, just doesn't want to and has no ambition to. I can't imagine what other people are facing.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrea. Anybody else want to share or ask a question?
I'm just thankful that we have such a fabulous staff who's committed to doing the best that they can in a tough situation. I really, I appreciate each and every one of you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to comment on Andrea's statement. I had her daughter in class last year. That child is not normally unmotivated. And so the fact that she is really very concerning to me. It just, it's one more piece that adds to my concern about the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we've heard you all loud and clear, and just hearing from a bunch of you in different sort of addressing different ways, different experiences and different components of this was really valuable. So thank you.
I also love that I work with a staff where you watch the news and there are a lot of schools and staff that are saying, absolutely, I will not come in. I will not put my own personal health in jeopardy to teach, where we actually have the opposite, where we have teachers willing, eager to be back in the building. And while I know we have to do it safely, I just appreciate the enthusiasm because I do work with an amazing team.
I agree, but I also want to recognize that, I appreciate that we're all thinking about if you, staff, teachers, administrators, if you do not feel safe and are not safe coming in, to the building, that we are talking and considering offering other options and that everybody can play a really important role because we need to serve all these different modes. So, I appreciate hearing that as well.
I want to say something about that component, that it is possible, and I'm here to give the example. It's possible to know that one's personal health won't allow for the safety, but to strongly advocate for students to be able to come in. It's a really tough spot to be in emotionally. to want desperately. Like when I see the kids in the parking lot, I'm like, hey kids, you know, like, I think they actually come to the parking lot hoping we will say hi. And just to, I fear that there is stigma around not wanting to come in, not feeling safe coming in. And I just want to kind of like raise, like just advocate for those of us who, I don't know exactly who on staff does or doesn't feel safe coming in entirely, but I just want to advocate for those of us who don't feel safe. Also, as a person who lives in Eugene and who lives with somebody who works in and out of the state and travels a lot, I don't feel it'd be wise. You know, everybody has their own unique circumstance, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it is possible to hold two truths at once. And to acknowledge that there's no good answer. Like there's the do no harm factor does not exist. What's the least harm? What's the least harm with the most self-determination? And that was an important part of that statement, I think, was the self-determination part. And I don't ask everyone to agree with what I'm saying right now. And I didn't plan to say it, so I didn't like formulate it. But just, I would beg everybody to keep in mind that each person, each student, each family, each staff member has their own unique situation and needs. So, and I think that what we're advocating for, what we're hoping for, is for people to be able to say, this is what I need. And that includes foremost the students. And since I have the floor and everybody's gone over, I want to give one more example. I don't know if this is appropriate or not, and I didn't talk to Julene or Lou or Lisa about this ahead of time. The thing that has been weighing very heavy on me for the past couple of weeks was talking to a specific student who has been clearly told by family that him being online is a bother, and so doesn't always attend. We have situations like that too. And this student has an IEP. So busing kids in is vitally important when we do this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on from a discussion like this doesn't feel right to take care of, sort of silly business things, but we do need to. And so I just want to say again, I really, really appreciate your time tonight and all of the time that is behind it. So thank you so much for coming in and presenting. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want, but you all have put quite a few hours in today. So just up to you. So thanks again. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Bye. All right. Well, I definitely still have tears in my eyes, but I think we should move on. And I just, glance at the maintenance report and hear from Jaron on the business office report. So, I don't know if Jody, if you want to highlight anything on the maintenance, but it's a detailed report and it was really interesting to hear everything that's, been going on. So
I actually haven't looked at it. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. It's,
I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's great. It just provides a lot of details. So, yeah. And I don't have any questions about it. I really appreciate Randy submitting it. It's nice to know, what's getting taken care of. So
we have been able to, with not having students on campus, one positive, we have two maintenance crew staff members who are 100% maintenance right now. That's all they do. And to look around our campus, it is looking pretty sharp. There are things that they are doing that they haven't done since I came because they just haven't had the time and they haven't had the manpower, and now they do. And so it's really nice to be able to get caught up, because once you're caught up, it's easier to maintain and keep it that way. And so it's been really helpful to have that extra time and manpower to be able to do that. So get caught up on stuff. So
yeah. All right. You can, if you want to look at it more, it's in the board packet. So I'll move on. And business office report. Sharon, do you have?
Let's see, a couple notes with the fire that was hanging out here. We got about $10,000 for letting them use our facilities. So that was nice of them to do that. We are putting in for a little grant for early intervention, right, Jody?
It's an early intervention system. We get a whopping $400, but the goal is to combine our funds with all the district funds from Lane County and pool it to have a better system for early intervention warning system for student struggling learners. That's the goal, but we have to apply for the money, and then Lane ESD would help, especially the smaller districts, all pool it together to develop a system.
Yep. Couple of meetings I've attended since we didn't have our business manager in-person conference. They're doing it over like the next 3 weeks online. Legislative update, they talked about anticipated budget for the next biennium, and I don't know, it's up in the air right now. Anticipating a shortfall, but there's a lot of rainy day money left still. PERS rates are dropping a few percent for us with the re-amortization that they did. And
never thought that would happen.
Well, and the problem is the people talking at the legislative update think that the state's going to say, okay, we saved you money here, so we don't need to budget more money. And I don't know, money's coming in, money's going out.
Okay.
Remember if there were any particular things on that I wanted to highlight on the bills. Yeah, I don't remember anything last month. Probably more Chromebooks. I think they might have been on it, and we put in an order to get 20 more just for make sure that we have enough, especially when they break, since I've got a couple in here that are not working. So Chromebooks are cheap, and there's a reason for that. So
and we did loan 20 of our Chromebooks. We actually had some extra. We loaned the 20 of them to Fern Ridge School District. They were planning to move to K3 in-person instruction on a Tuesday and Wednesday, or excuse me, that was a Tuesday. And that Monday, the metrics came out late afternoon, and the metrics were too high to allow them to enter. So they had to do a really quick transition to CDL, comprehensive distance learning. And so they were short several hundred Chromebooks. And so I said, well, I could give you 20. I know you need 300, but so we did loan some Chromebooks too. And they're using those for staff. So that made me feel really good, because hopefully they'll come back in the same condition they went in. But so anyway.
Well, and those are important too, because if and when kids can come back at whatever capacity, you're going to need those for sanitary reasons, whatever, right? So.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is that, even if we have kids come back to classes, if everybody has their Chromebook and they now know how to use them, that just can enrich the in-class environment as well. So that's, yeah, definitely good to have. All right. Okay, Jared.
So yeah, that's, unless there's any questions on any of the finances that you see,
I mean, the only question, Aaron, and it doesn't look to me like this is, an issue for us right now, but like the extra expenses because of, COVID, things we are dealing with. I know that that's hitting them hard, but I think like so can get reimbursed for, like, right, or
Grant, we have some grant. It kind of broke up there, but I think I understood. We do have the CARES Act money and
the CDL money.
the comprehensive distance learning money that is being used to pay for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, between the two, it's 150,000 or so. So, we ought to be all right.
Okay. Great.
And I have just a huge shout out and kudo. Jaren's our new technology manager and coordinator, and we could not have done this without him. Without just his ability and his quick, he doesn't know how to do something, man, he knows it within a half an hour to an hour. He just has really taken it on, and he hasn't slowed down. Hasn't slowed him down from doing business office and personnel and accounts payable and accounts receivable stuff, in addition to the technology work that he's doing. And so we're really lucky.
Thank you, Jaren.
Yep. I've gotten so tired of it, though, that I've taken to hiding out so people can't find me.
I think that happens to all IT directors, right?
He goes to the attic. In fact, I came in here, I have to tell the story, the other day, and there's all these wires, like cables, underneath the ladder to the attic in the electrical room. And I'm like, Jaren must be in the attic because I'm cleaning out. But yeah, he goes and hides in the attic. I know his hiding spot. So
yeah, my pile's about a foot deep, and I'm trying to clean stuff up. Is my goal here. And
yeah, well, I do think it, that is a job that I think would drive people to complete distraction. So I anyway, really appreciate it. It seems like that, from that students and staff, are getting the support that they need to solve problems. And I can't believe that you're able to do it. And I'm really impressed and grateful. So, okay, any questions for Jaren before we move on from business? All right. So we did the staff presentation out of order. So skipping to 5, the consent agenda for August and September, because we did, August, let's see, September and October. Oh, you mean, okay, I see, yes, got it. Okay, so for August and September, so because we held our board meeting, we were our order was sort of, our schedule got messed up, and we didn't do a consent agenda approval for in our last meeting, I believe. So, okay, sorry, I'm just trying to process that and remember. So once somebody feels so moved, I would accept a motion to approve 5.1, 2, and 3, payroll, check register, and prior minutes. If you're muted, you'll have to unmute before you move.
I move, but that's a really long thing that you said, and so I move for that.
Okay. Okay, we'll take it. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, and I'm gonna do the roll call so I can make sure I hear everybody. So Mary Ellen,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
and Marilyn.
Marilyn said yes, I could hear her in the room next door. She just sat, for whatever, her mic's not working. So
Okay.
it goes in the minutes.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll take that as a, okay, and I as well. All right. So action items, 6.1, approve updated budget directive for retirement stipends. Jaren rewrote, sort of touched up what we've been discussing about a directive for retirement stipends, so not a policy, and it's in the board packet. Maybe you could display it. And then, but it is really it is what we've already reviewed and discussed and everything. I think there was only one, well, it wasn't really a change, but it doesn't include a 36-month, we had talked about putting a 36-month cap on it, but because this is tied to years of service, and it's already got a 30 plus, 30 years, and we don't get service much, much beyond 36 years, then we removed that and just simplified it by keeping it completely tied to years of service.
Additionally, I added on the that they could take a lump sum payout sometime instead of taking monthly, and made it PERS eligible years of service. So
yeah,
that means they have to have worked at least 600 hours in the year.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And I did a amortization to figure out how much, I suppose it could be called an amortization calculation to figure out how much to budget for it. Starting in year 11, basically moving at 5% per year after year 11, times the number of years that it would, times the number of months that it would be, and just some calculations. And right now I'm budgeting 70,000 just to it was around 70,000. And if everybody, I think if everybody that could cash out in it, if everybody retired all at once this year, I think we'd be 60,000 that we'd have to pay out. So, I mean, that's mainly between just a few people. But yeah, so that's
I mean, that's an accrual that we'll need to have accrued. We can't have that surprising us or hanging out there.
accrual. There you go.
Yeah. I wonder if, we talked about lump sum, and I mean, that is, I think, a good option to have, but is there a budgetary reason where a lump sum versus a, monthly payout would be preferable? I guess an accounting or a budgetary reason.
No, I don't think it matters. I'm planning on putting in the budget for the full amount, funded at the 70,000 or whatever I calculate, and then put in an expense, since got to figure maximum possible expenses. And so I'm going to expense it at 60,000 or so, just in the event everybody retired. But as far as considerations, one way or the other, if somebody's got 36 months that they can do it, if they want to cash it out all at once, that works in our favor because they're not getting the increases over the next 2 years when the health rates increase. So
Yep. Okay, great. All right, so are there any other questions about this directive? And if there are not, then I'd appreciate a motion to pass.
I move that we adopt 6.1, the new incentive for to pay health benefits for retirees.
I second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, Mary Ellen?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Hey, all right, and I as well. Great, okay. Okay, so the next is 6.2, suspend the policy, which is our public comment at board meetings. And we're not suspending that policy because we don't want public comment. We are suspending it because, and Jody, you can chime in if I'm saying this incorrectly, but because what we have listed, the means we have listed in that policy for public comment aren't ones that we can accommodate currently with, our board structures, our board meeting logistics. So we'd suspend that policy, but we would continue to solicit and offer public comment opportunity. And the means and methods for that would be posted with, board meeting notifications and stuff. So
as I understand it, you could still make a public comment. It would just be read at the meeting versus you being there at the meeting.
Yeah, correct. Yep. But because we can't do it per our policy, we need to suspend the policy. So I'd accept a motion to suspend policy BDDH.
So moved.
I move to suspend the policy.
Okay, so moved and seconded, and all in favor, Mary Ellen?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And I as well. Okay. Great. All right, so policy updates, first reading. Woo! Jody, you usually take this. Are you willing? Okay. And I will say, Jaren sent out the policies to us on a separate email. So. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up that I was going to ask you to do that.
And I always just want to know, Jody, like what are the highlights?
Right.
Yeah.
So I went through them all, and this is way too big. Now I have to figure out how to reduce this. Okay. I went through them all and used cross-outs and there really aren't a lot of policies. So I think we can get through them quickly. I'm just going to scroll through and you can see all the changes that are highlighted. And if I can do this, I figured it out. Then you can also see the comments from OSBA. So this is communicable diseases staff. And one of the things I did not mention, I just chose not to for various reasons in my presentation about our current instructional model is we currently, and when I say we, every school district in the state of Oregon currently does not have any PACE insurance coverage for communicable diseases. None. So that it got PACE dropped to everybody, and there is not a single insurer in the country that is currently insuring school districts, I don't know about other entities, for communicable diseases. What that means basically is if a staff member were to get COVID and die and the family decided it was because they were working at school, they could sue us and we would not have any coverage for it.
So
now,
what are other district, like how are they dealing with it?
They're not, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to, I mean,
You roll the dice.
You roll the dice. You're hoping that, normally when a district gets sued, or you get a tort claim saying that somebody's going to sue you, here's what we're suing you for. PACE takes care of it. You give them all the information, they manage it, they decide if they're going to settle, if they're going to pay, if they're going to, it's all in PACE's hands. That's what we pay them for. But in this instance, if that were to happen to any school district that would get sued for this, it would fall on the district to pay the attorney fees and or any settlement or anything. And so I don't like to throw that out there as a reason why we shouldn't do limited in-person instruction or any on-campus student instruction. But it is something that is a little nagging in the back of my mind, that I don't want to be the poster child for getting sued for communicable disease. Let another district do that has more resources than we do. Sorry to say that in public, but so that is, and then this policy is also here. They're updating this as well. So
I just really quick question about that. Like, there must be legislative discussion about that. I mean, no school, even going forward for next year, or even next year. I mean, that it's, to like that, like that situation is going to happen.
it was brought up in the legislature to hold districts harmless, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't. It just, as far as I know right now, we have some legislative updates coming up from COSA and ODE, but from what I understand right now, that was brought up to the legislative session, not the last session they had, and they weren't willing to hold districts harmless for that.
Isn't there some coverage though for us if under limited in person, we're giving teachers the option to come to campus? So can you, if they do, can you make
that is true?
Have them sign a waiver or something if they do decide to come to campus, saying they realize that?
Well, and that's been thrown around with having students sign waivers as well. Release of liability and while that has been brought up and suggested, and a waiver doesn't mean anything.
Right.
When we've asked Hungerford's and OSBA, who helps support PACE, you can have them do that. And originally, when we were thinking about continuing sports in the spring, it was under the condition everybody would sign a waiver and release of liability, but there's it's not legally gonna help.
The only way it kind of helps is that if somebody has to sign a waiver and you've talked them through it, then you at least know that they heard you, that this is, it's sort of just a way to document communication too in that way, but not legal document.
Yeah. And that is true. That's something that I'm getting copies from other districts of what they've been using. And I'm going to continue to investigate and see, maybe something's changed and I'm just not in the loop with it, because there's a lot of things going on, a lot of things changing. So there might be some updates to that I'm unaware of, but it is on my list to check into. That's for a small district.
Yeah.
That can be huge.
That's concerning for certainly on a board level, on a district level, that's really concerning.
It is. It's just a concern that's really hard to put out there to staff who, that's not in their wheelhouse, that their kids are, it's,
Right. Well, yeah. And I think that our place there is like, we maybe could take part in helping to advocate for, legislative, like consideration of this or something, but so we work on it on another end, potentially. Not that our voices alone will do much, but
they might. Well, it's just funny that now we're having an updated communicable disease. I'm like, really? Okay. Anyway, so basically it's taking the communicable disease policy and it's expanding it to include COVID and COVID-19. So that's kind of, they now are calling it a restrictable disease, and there's a whole list of them. So these are just ones that they've added or changed based on law cases. Communicable disease guidance from 2020, again, adding in COVID-19. And then it lists all of them out. What are the restrictable diseases? and how I like the fact that they're updating this because it's very specific to what staff, like they will not attend work at a school or facility while in a communicable stage of a restrictable disease. And so it is very specific, which is very helpful in these kinds of cases. So this one's updating communicable disease policy. And then we're deleting this sexual harassment policy. We're replacing it with a new version. And the new version is here. And there aren't a lot of changes to it, except it is much more specific and it's aligning with the new Title IX laws, the new federal law, not new, but changes to the Title IX expectations and rules. And so there weren't any changes. He gives examples. It talks about the, who do you report it to? Brenda and I both did some Title IX training on the new requirements and expectations. So this is in place of the old one. And then I did leave in some of these, you'll see I left in superintendent or designee. And part of that is in a lot of the cases, if we need to bring in a third party investigator, I can designate them to have the authority to investigate or to make a decision, especially in such a small district. That's really important to have. So that's the new sexual harassment policy. And then the administrative rule, the AR, how are we going to implement this? How are we going to, that explains the sexual harassment complaint procedure. So that's also new and it includes it all. And the complaint form. And I think that's the same. I don't think the complaint form, or the witness disclosure form, I don't think that has changed at all. And then this is for the Title IX. Additional definitions, it just explains it a little bit more. I'm going to go quickly just because I know you guys have had them to look at. So,
yeah, and this being first reading, we can continue, we can.
Yeah, and then this is the AR for sexual harassment complaint procedure. We're deleting it and replacing it with the new one that we just saw. So this one's deleted. Deleting the form that goes with it. This is also, there's a lot of different sexual harassment policies. Again, this is the deleting one and that we're replacing with the new one with all the new Title IX rules and regulations. This is the communicable disease updated policy for students. And again, it's very prescriptive, very specific. And again, lists the restrictable diseases and all that. So it aligns it with the staff one. Updated personnel records, I believe taking out, or designee, instead of his or her, putting in there, making it more gender neutral. I changed this. It's not the personnel office, it's the district office. We don't have a personnel office. So some of those I actually went in and crossed out because it was a choice you could make. Public records law, about disciplinary records, changes to that. And then again, changing his or her to there. Disclosure of information, updating based on civil rights and Oregon revised statutes. What records are confidential, what records are not confidential. We've been having a lot of requests, public records requests from like open the books. That's the big one, is open the books. They're out of Florida, I think, and they request really interesting information. And so to have it be very specific as to what's considered public record, what's not, is helpful. special education, evaluation, and eligibility procedures. Just clarifying verbiage. I think they're always doing that. They've added in medical, sensory, and health information as part of an evaluation in planning it. So there's some, oh, and I thought that there would be more to that, sorry. Student suicide prevention. This is updated policy. There's new laws around suicide prevention curriculum that has to be provided to students. And what our prevention plan has to include. And this is something that Brittany, our counselor, has been really instrumental in helping us develop. She did one for, I think she actually did it for her master's program that she just finished. So it kind of had a dual purpose. So this is, I think, an additional policy. And then this is also new COVID-19 related leave. This takes the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, allowing for paid sick leave, and it actually puts it into policy so that staff who have been employed for at least 30 days are eligible for the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act around coronavirus. And it really details use of sick leave, and if they run out of sick leave, how many days they can have at 2/3 pay, things like that. And then this is the AR that goes with that too. I think there's 2 ARs. So Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. It does list out, and I didn't know about this, Jaren, up to $511 per day and this much aggregate. Those numbers were in there. And so I don't know if that's, the act. Oh, it's based on the money that's listed in the FFCRA act. So, okay. I wondered where those numbers came from because they weren't numbers that not matched anything we knew. So there are limits on the amount of money we would have to spend per employee. And then how they apply for the leave. So this is the second AR. So this is, when they're requesting the leave and what is it for? Because it's very specific what they can use the leave for. A lot of districts are using this with staff that are wanting to work off site or not work on campus. A lot of districts have been using forms like this. And so it's really nice to see it actually put into policy from OSBA, because then we know it's been vetted through legal. So that's there's one more that got added, and it's this one. Can you all see that? All students belong. Okay. This one no. Okay. I did it wrong. I just switched it on my screen and not yours. So I'm going to stop that one. Share this one. No. Stop. Okay. Now, there it is. I got it. Yeah. It took me a little while, sorry. So this is the All Students Belong that I read the letter and talked about at the beginning of the board meeting. I do think it's important to note the district statement on equity. That's something I think we should refer to our equity committee.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's part of what we wanted to produce, and as far as part of that equity process is a equity statement.
Yes. So basically this is a kind of a reiteration of the letter, but it's basically symbols of hate. It specifically calls out the noose, the swastika, the Confederate flag. OSBA did mention that they recognize there are other symbols of hate, but They cautioned against adding those into policy without seeking legal guidance first. And so they're just really, this doesn't limit it to only being the noose, the swastika, and the Confederate flag. There's other things that can cause just as much animosity and that could be considered a symbol of hate. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's not just limited to those three themes. And then I selected a couple times district instead of school, because it's district. I want it to be district grounds, not just, because I think when you think of school, you think of this building and the elementary building, and I want it to be the entire school district grounds. And then the AR that goes along with that, which is the complaint procedure. And I just chose without unreasonable delay, immediately, promptly. It's just semantics. And then I did put the administrator acknowledges receipt of complaint. But I believe this is also one, because this is step 2. I think it's step 3. No, I guess I didn't do a designee, shall the appeal. So I might change that and leave designee in there, because depending on what the complaint is, it might be appropriate to have an outside person, which would be a designee. So I think maybe, Jaren, can you make that we'll change that? Okay. And that's it. So those are the policies for first reading.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. And again, we do have those. So we'll do the second reading at our November meeting and approve them then. So, moving on, 6.4 student investment account grant agreement.
So we have received the grant agreement. We've already approved the plan, but we approved the plan and we're getting way less money. So Jaren, do you have the total for the grant agreement? I could guess, but so this is the grant agreement. Basically, we just need to have the board approve the agreement that we're going to agree to take this money and use it like we said we would. $65,000. And so those are the funds that we're going to be receiving this year. And anything we spend it on has to be through what was put in the student investment account
Plan. Right.
plan. So,
and does that have to, but we don't have to change the plan because we're getting less money than we
no.
planned for, right?
No, in fact, they told us not to. They told us to keep the plan the same. And then as long as what we're spending is in our plan, then we're good to go. So,
okay.
Yeah. So we just need to approve this grant agreement.
Yeah.
I recommend we do that.
Yes. I recommend not turning away $65,000. Okay. So the board member like to move for approval?
I move that we accept the money for the student investment grant.
Nice second.
Oh my God, that's.
Okay, all in favor. Mary Ellen?
Yep.
Andrea?
No.
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And me as well. Okay. So discussion items, let's see that we had the equity committee update from Michelle earlier. And board goals. I think I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about board goals tonight.
No, I put that on there just because it's something we normally do. I will tell you, it's been a discussion among superintendents. What are we doing for our board goals? I mean, this is such, and I can't remember. I think it was from the Nestucca superintendent sent it out. I think that's where she was from. And it was just there was one goal and it had to do with the education of our students in CDL with COVID. And I couldn't find the exact verbiage to share with you guys tonight, but I thought it was perfect because it kind of summed it all up, that it was pretty much, let's get through this school year with the pandemic and CDL and limited in-person instruction and giving our teachers the support they need, the students the supports they need. And that's our goal for the year. So I will find the verbiage and send it to you just to see if it's something you guys are interested in, just keeping it simple.
Right. Yep. And that sounds good. I don't see any way we would address goals that addressed all of the things that we, so yeah, I think something that's simple and comprehensive is good. Okay. Yeah. So it'd be great to have some language to look at. Thanks. All right. The OSBA virtual annual convention is on Saturday, November 14th from 8 to 4. And I will say, even though last year, Mary Ellen and I did attend and it was really great. I really thought, I learned a lot, and it was nice to be in an environment with other board members and other administrators. And it was, I thought it was great. I know this is virtual and, but I still think it's definitely a place to learn a lot. And I don't know if this is true for this one, but every virtual presentation or meeting or workshop I've been to for my job has been recorded, and then they make that available to participants afterwards, as long as you registered and signed up. So I would imagine that's probably true for this as well. So I think that if anybody has even the slightest interest, it's a good thing to sign up for. There's lots of good topics, interesting stuff, pertinent things for us. And then, I think even if you can't actually sit in front of your computer from 8 to 4 on that day, I would imagine it would do for some double checking, but I think that we would have access to those later. And so you could check back in if there were things you were particularly interested in. So that's my plan, is to go and not, not chain myself to the computer for all those hours necessarily, but to try and pick and choose and go back and watch stuff if I need to later. Okay. We didn't receive any public comment that I'm aware of. Okay. I think we just need to make sure it's clear in the community that we still want public comment, and we just have to take it in a different way because, we needed to change the format of our meetings slightly. So, it doesn't, and then that's it. Other comments from the board. I want to say to board members and and Jody and Brenda and Jaren, thank you for an extended meeting tonight. It was long. I didn't feel like we could. I did try and say 15 minutes to the staff initially. Well, I initially tried for 10, I have to say. But I, just listening to them, and it was really important to hear everything they had to say, and I didn't want to make that shorter at all. But I realized that we went way, way, way over the time we usually do. So thank you very much for putting the time in. So, all right. Other comments from any other board members?
I move that we adjourn.
Any seconds? Nobody else wants to get out of here.
I second. I couldn't find my mouse or my unmute.
All right, all in favor. Mary Ellen.
Yes.
Andrea.
Yes.
Marilyn.
Yes.
And I as well. Okay. All right. And the big off, I guess it's, now off the record, but a big thank you, of course, to Jody and Brenda and Jaren for the continued crazy effort this is all requiring. So much appreciated. Okay.